of an ancient wisdom, creator, spirit, beautiful, strong. Yes, it giveth life for these sacred lands, eternal systems delivered through the sun. To the depths it glisten, stars in the night, crystallized life. Ancestors' prayers in my ears so sublime. Blood in the soil, never forget or deny. That anguish, the cries, the ongoing genocide. The devastation, theft and wiping out of tribes. Remorseless attacks, heinous crimes. Poison in the waters, but the people we survived. Inscribed with lies and decimated with deceitful bribes. But the people we survive, pay respect and give love and thanks one time. One time, one time. Peace, love, and unity to all my originals rise. The ancestors in the land amidst every child, woman, and man, no matter where you stand. The ancestors in the land, so I pay respect. The ancestors in the land amidst every child, woman, and man, no matter where you stand. The ancestors in the land, so I pay respect. Seems the world lost its mind like a sleep deprived. People now peeping signs, the symbols divine. Carvings in stone, sacred piles, ancient truths, and the workings of the grounds, the creeks and the rivers, forests where snakes liver, bird calls deliver, oh truths and lost diction, the fog's holy halo, crystallize and glisten, now replaced with street names, newly written, smiles line space, comfortable and smitten, roads and avenues, central business district, spiritual lassitude, laws and metaphysics overtaken by the laws of these long lost mystics, preceded the present, new type of linguistics causing nations conflicted, seemingly cryptic but confusion running rampant, but deeply intrinsic devastation dipped in, severed tie to the ancient rocks, vaporized out of sight on a soon-to-be broken down plot, omens I compare, seeping into sight, time to awaken, pay respect. The ancestors in the land amidst every child, woman and man, no matter where you stand. The ancestors in the land, so I pay respect. The ancestors in the land amidst every child, woman and man, no matter where you stand. The ancestors in the land, so I pay respect.
Words, okay?
Mm-hmm. Nangana mulana, yenbana. Nangana mulana, waka. Nangana mulana, yiringa yiri. Nangana mulana, kaila. Nangana mulana, yakapna. Niranoma, yakapna, wuta. I acknowledge this land and I acknowledge all Indigenous lands, and particularly acknowledge the Indigenous land of Aotearoa. I acknowledge the connections across waters. I acknowledge that I am standing on Uriora land of my ancestors who have been connected to this land for 80,000 plus years. I am indebted to them in every single way as I walk in this world, connected to them and to their sovereign ways. And so I acknowledge the sovereign ways also of the ancestors and those who descend from the ancestors now in Aotearoa also. Our ancestors will always evoke. Their thread is as much the image I see when I look in the mirror as what I am. I am my ancestors in I, but I observe I also to witness ancestors, to hear ancestors. Gata, na mutora dana genbena nangata, na mutora dana genbena dona. Gata Nawu Dora Angrum Ipun Gipuk Marangrain Palambra Yinya Yenbana. I listen to stand awake. I listen to stand alive. I listen to be always with communal fire, lit by ancestors. We need this to survive.
Thank you, Neil, for the song and the words and the music. Hi, everyone. My name's Oliver Shaw, and I'm coming to you from Wurundjeri country. I'm here to reflect on my current project that is a practice-led PhD at RMIT University, where I'm writing memoir and developing slow methods that draw from places or ways such as the ancient Indian tradition of Ayurveda. My methods include walking slowly, drinking water, and writing by pencil. Growing up, my knowledge came from reading the ocean. I learnt to surf long before I learnt to read. I learnt this practice in central Queensland, that is Darrumbal and Woppaburra country, and in Tonga, two very different types of reading experiences. Now, through my current PhD project, where I write memoir and develop these slow methods, I recognize and value this formative learning and how it has informed the way I see and experience the world. The ocean informed my sense of looking. Your head's in the clouds, the math teacher would say to me, staring out the window. No, my head is here. I am looking at the clouds and the way they move, imagining that offshore wind on the ocean. To understand the ocean, like reading a book, you have to look and listen to the surface and the movement, and to the wind and to the clouds, and then toward the sun and moon, which inform knowledge of tides and rips. As a surfer, you enter that surface and learn to move with and within the ocean, like reading and then imagining from the words.
Deep in a position maybe nobody expected. Cultures torn apart from many intense pressures. Destructive misdirection from election to election. We need transformation to address it. But how we gonna heal if the people's disconnected? How we gonna heal if our mothers disrespected? So much information, facts so rejected. Neglected, willful ignorance, yelling at truth is not accepted. Rejected while society fall apart into depression. As sacredness of land is waiting for all to be connected. See you so sacred. From the coast forest to desert, from thousands years ago into the present. To everywhere we step in, we step upon a blessing. Whilst they hear the land singing ancestors, guidance never left us. Back to the land, pure law. No question, living unconditional love with each breath, pure.
Get back to the lane, 'cause it will never, ever, ever hurt you. You've got to get back to the lane, 'cause it will never, ever, ever hurt you. You've got to.
Sometimes it feels like I woke up in a nightmare, then everything is right. Wanna cut the land right here, but in my right here is the pain and devastation as the colonial destruction continues all across the nations. Rejection of the fact we care for this land across all places of sacredness, from the Torah Strait to Kula Nation, and you're my home. Original placement as our mothers pleading for us, they hate our causing desperation. Singing our hearts and minds and spirits for the transformation. Be patient, I am here to clear your pain and frustration. Just be with me, I understand you and I love you and I always will, no matter how long you've been away. You are my child, and every second I pray for that you can elevate into peace with the sacred laws. Come back to the land for liberation. It's time to make it right. Let's heal these wounds and lamentations.
Get back to the land, 'cause it will never, ever, ever hurt you. You've got to get back to the land, 'cause it will never, ever, ever let you down. Let you down. You've got to get back. You've got to get back. Get back to the land. Get back. You've got to get back. You've got to get back to the land. You've got to. Waka mulana, 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 waka mulana.
I've unmuted.
Thank you again, Neil, for that song.
Hold on,
And your
Oliver.
words.
Oliver,
Sorry,
Oliver.
sorry.
Just got some words coming through from Neil.
Okay. The land calls for us back. The land calls for us to listen. The land calls because it is part of us. Part of I, and I part of land. In these times of urgency, I have no choice but to listen to mother, to listen to land, listen to country, listen to all people within country. Country will always be sovereign, and I is sovereign through country. And in the spaces between, the connection remains. Sovereignty never ceded. Call of country never ceded. Laws of place, laws in time, space and now, never ceded.
In my current projects, value is placed on direct perception and direct imagination. Even if I can't see the sea, I can imagine it through memory, or from before through practicing methods that engage deep time. Through my learning to read, I come to focus the materiality of words in themselves. They are active and they move. My use of language and writing in memoir attempts to mimic this. Ideas or images that are static begin to move within the work through the words. This happens in the writing process, as a memory comes to the present through the writing and forms in real time on the page, growing and changing. My process of listening activates my seeing. Opening the space for listening allows the memories themselves to form and flow. To listen is to desire to see the thing itself and to hear it. In my memoir writing, silence and solitude activate listening, not by turning away from the noise, but within it. I activate this personally through meditation, for example, sitting with eyes closed twice a day for 20 minutes. This opens slow processes and time to listen. It also helps me to decolonize my subjectivity, I could say, and the myth of speed and progress, which seem to be fallacies of the ego and its desire for material success and capital residence, echo chambers of hell. This is why I do these methods, because if I don't, I tend to become Tyson Yunkaporta's idiot and emu, which seem to be the result of those latter things. And that's important to note, that in other knowledge systems, such as Yunkaporta speaks to, it's okay to be an idiot from time to time. And when I sit and meditate, I begin to hear the wind and then feel it. I am alive. I write from here too, with the wind. I acknowledge the wind's presence and its effect on my work. It's the same as surfing, always with the wind. I love the wind.
Open eyes to see ancestors asking many questions. What are these lessons I compressed upon our dresses? Fuels tribal addiction, guesses anyone's best guesses. Now they got generations seeking mass convalescence. Eucalyptus widowed by devious shepherds. Totems taken with no conscience or questions. No concept or consciousness of things before the present. Vacuous and empty like a windswept desert. Harrowing howls under the moon crescent in the noon sunrise. To change the present, rearrange trauma laden. Generations fed up, but the focus to be better. Inspired colonial resin, fermented in these strange weathers. Some seeming to get stuck in quagmires. Vision 27, but original lines always remembered. Hold together in the now as we hold on to forevermore treasures. We always remember always remember. Yeah, we always remember forevermore, yeah. We always remember always remember. Yeah, we always remember forevermore. But some, they lost frames, claim divine name change. Rearrange strange ways, submerged in haze, gray upon halcyon days, house unseen in the maze. Destitute ways, left with the loot and skip frames. Top conditions, formulated wild renditions, play victims in written cinematic systems. But they got it all messed up, land covered in division. Wild incisions, a carnage of innocent fiction. Why just sit and wait for a minute, the spirit get to floating. Up beyond metropolis, river locomotion. Hear the trickle, leads the pain beyond the hocus pocus. Open heart release into the souls of and devotion. From eons before to the very present moment, I just sit and analyze, reacquaint and scope, but I'm still trying to stay blessed. Staying strong as by stresses trickle down horrific conquest. Another warrior woman, just trying to get rest on this quest. I will close eyes, focus and catch breath, stoke on fire. 16 and ashes from the sacred pot. It's alive, dripping down, create the spirit life. Yes, we always remember always remember. Yeah, we always remember forevermore. Yeah, we always remember always remember. Yeah, we always remember forevermore.
Always remember.
Ancestors,
Always remember.
sacred lore,
Always remember.
where we come from, forevermore.
Always remember.
Oh, the spirit
Always remember.
in the land,
Always
not a
remember.
nang, not a nang.
Forevermore.
Speak now.
Remembering is embedded. Remembering is an echo. Remembering is Yenbanabaya Lochbagara. Ancestors' song speaking now. Ancestors' song will always speak. Gada, now. When there has been such vicious impositions that have not broken us, it is clear that ancestors' songs will always speak now. They tell us what they did. Nanyabak Gana Waka Ganya Dana. Walking mother country in good ways. These good ways are Urumach Tomadamanga, full of love. These good ways are Urumach Tungulija, full of strength. These good ways are Urumach Mulana, full of spirit.
Hi, my name's Bonny Cassidy, and I'd like to acknowledge and pay respects to Neil's people and country, Yorta Yorta, and to thank Neil for starting off this panel the right way and for bringing our attention to country this morning. This year I've been working with a group of undergraduate creative writing students at RMIT University in Nurm, otherwise known as Melbourne. All of the students I worked with were non-Indigenous, like me, from a variety of linguistic, ethnic and cultural backgrounds. I'm 38 years old. Their average age was 21. They had been studying creative writing full-time for 18 months and me writing for 15 years. We met online only as the pandemic demanded, but the majority of the students were located in the Eastern Kulin Nation, in the Greater Melbourne area and in Central Victoria. And I met them online from my home, also within the Eastern Kulin Nation on Dja Dja Wurrung land near Castlemaine. So for 12 weeks, for 5 hours per week, we had one job to do together, which was to attempt to each make a personal reply to the welcome to country offered by Kulin elders, which is Womanjeka, or come, what is your business? What's your purpose here? There's a lot that I might say about the work we did together this year, but the voices of the students themselves reveal the most significant layers of what we learned in a relationship of obligation to reply to welcome. Obligation as guests on country. Who are you? Where are you from? And what are you up to? They're simple enough questions, but with complex, hidden or forgotten answers. Addressing these questions took us through several stages: pausing or hesitating, listening and noticing, and then committing and acknowledging. So I want to assemble some of the voices from this group as a way of showing you what I learned from these students, what they didn't know about themselves, their locality, their identities, how they began to listen with and on country, and their willingness and their persistence to resist the narratives that they have inherited as non-Indigenous young people. Those narratives of a homogenous national identity and of a transient settler self in southeast urban Australia. We started with many prompts, one of which was this quote from the British American writer Taye Selassie. "Don't ask me where I'm from, ask me where I'm a local." Says Jed, "Am I as much a visitor as the old bloke next door? Does a shared fence make us local in a temporary home?" Laura says, "I am not local to this place. The roots of my feet have not dug through the earth. The steps of these streets have become so familiar, but they're not the ones my ancestors laid. My neighbours smile and speak to me using language I learnt in a classroom, not a crib." Lillian says, "I run past, cycle past, I bring my dog past, but I'm still just passing by. I cannot enter because I no longer belong there. The people I knew, we no longer belong to each other. The school must make room for new locals. And thus my locality is recycled to a city where I don't belong, where people are just names. I'll pretend to be a local until I am one." Laura says, "I'm a local here, but if I spend too much time in the city, I get sick, all hollowed out like an avocado without the pit. I grew up in Queensland on a 6,000 acre farm. Colamba, a clean Scottish name. I haven't lived there really since I was 12, but I know it best. I think better, I write better, I'm a better person when I'm in the bush. I know 'from' is a curious context in this, is a curious word in this context, but I don't know how else to say it. My identity is tied up in it, inextricably linked. I want to write about it, go home to it, curl up in its huge skies and lie down for a nap. Is that how you can tell you're a local?" Lachlan says, "I live almost nowhere and must trek regularly a whole lot more nowhere to get somewhere, anywhere. I live over 20 miles outside the city and over 10 stations away from campus. There are no monuments. There are no historical areas. The oldest parts of the place have been built over by condos and eyesores on the philosophy that if you can't make it match the place, make it stand out. All I've ever written in my many years was anyone but myself, anywhere but nearby. It was easier. It was just more and better to grasp from." Lara says, "I went all the way into my late teens without touching soil. A landscape where I didn't have a crippling stammer. I imagined flowers billowing and leaves dappling and branches arching in a rosy, bucolic haze of perfection. I wasn't thinking of connection to land or country or anything relating to my real past, present at all. I was thinking escape."
Thanks, Bonny, and those beautiful words from your students. Kia ora koto. I pay my respects to the tangata whenua of Aotearoa. I acknowledge the land and the oceans of that place. I thank esteemed Elder Bonny Morris for your warm opening welcome, your inspiring words about mountains and the flow of rivers, your song. Your fluency in language is beautiful to me. So thank you very much for welcoming us and showing us your culture. My name is Olivia Guntarik and I'm from the Dusun Murut group in East Malaysian Borneo. For the first 6 years of my life, I lived in the villages of Tenham and Sandakan. And when I was in my 20s, I returned to live in Malaysia for 3 years. I'm a child of the mountain people. My mountain homeland is Kinabalu, my grandfather's dreaming site and my mother's final resting place. My river is Kiulu, which is my grandmother's sacred site, places peopled with memory. I come to you today from the unsurrendered, unceded land of the Bunurong peoples here in Melbourne, Australia. I acknowledge my elders, my late grandmother and my mother for sharing their knowledge with me that has put me on this path in life I'm on and for which I'll always be grateful. I grew up in Australia and most of my writing reflects on the diasporic experience and homeland politics. Often this writing expresses my uneasy relationship with my birthplace, as well as my ongoing negotiation with my adopted homeland. I'm a teacher, researcher, and writer. I write memoir and short stories, and I also retell some of those stories in digital form. This includes podcasts, videos, or sound walks, where I lay our First Nations stories over country using digital tools and through writing and building memory with other authors, artists, and collaborators. The work I present to you today is a video, and a bit later I'll play a sound piece that expresses ideas I've been exploring around learning, listening, and movement. With the video, I created it partly in response to Bonny Cassidy's work, my co-panelist, and the powerful words we've heard today from her students. The video was developed with members of my extended kin, both here and in Borneo. Listening to Bonny's students' words about the responsibilities framed within the welcome, hearing Neil's music flowing through our presentation about the urgency of ancestral testimony, and then Ol's reflections on reading A Changing Landscape inspires me to think about what writing is when we're offered opportunities like this to present our work together. Writing is a musical act. We compose and rehearse possible contributions, add rhythm and harmony. We reflect on one another's ideas, refine our own ideas and improvise. Writing becomes weaving and weaving becomes connection. We add texture, stitching layers, images, sound. Let me introduce a sound story to illustrate this point. In this video, I sketch out ideas about keeping time, dancing, and progress. Not in any prescriptive way, I pose questions to invite exploration rather than seeking answers. I want to find a new language to talk about what's possible and future states. I do not want to prescribe templates or tell people what they need to do or how to act. This video is about flow and fluency, being present and making present in a contested territory. Are you listening? Are you listening? Are you listening? I'm listening. At least I think I am. I'm letting the words wash over me without too much effort. This can be hard, so I need to swap roles with you. You can listen and I can speak. I invite you to listen in a new way. I invite you to listen closely. This is the music from a dance called Guntarik. The song is about repetition, provocation, improvisation, listening. Are you listening? I'm listening to my own voice, which sounds strange. I'm listening to my auntie's words in a language I've forgotten how to speak. Listening produces certain ways of thinking about our movement through the world and navigating complexity. We pay closer attention to things. We're more responsive to life forms. This is a way of being with and in nature. I listen to consider how I write, what I'll write. All of this is about reflection, the flow of ideas. This experience is intrinsically relational. Listen.
Alumis boros no dusun Olivia. Langadon ako dia.
I'm learning to speak my first language. I'm learning to listen again. I'm learning to speak differently.
Langadon ako dia. Isay ngaran no.
I come from a place that creates knowledge differently. This helps me think about how we dwell in difference.
Thank you, Olivia, for bringing our attention to listening explicitly. And I want to pick this up with a quote from Jen Crawford and Paul Collis, who tell us that country speaks to our conceptions of voice and point of view. So back to my students and what they think about that. Tom says, "It seems like my ties to home are loose, but the thought of moving on is scary and intimidating. How is it that I can so readily take for granted the feelings of trust and safety when I'm in my locality? Why is it that I'm so tied to my identity, yet I cannot articulate my feelings towards its importance? It's strange to question it after taking it in stride for so long. I never needed to think about it because my mind was always pulled forward. Where am I going? What am I doing? Why am I doing this? Never being able to stop thinking about the future, always being pushed back into the mindset if I began to slow down." Lara says, "I see the stands of manna gums at the entrance of the Merry and the ridges of basalt rock lining the creek, and I feel your care towards me. Despite the violence of the factories and houses, including my own, a few metres away." Laura says, "At first, we thought Kalamba was on Barragum country. It's only recently that the Iman elders brought up in local court that their country runs through our place too. Brigalow, Wilga and Beela trees swamp this country. You can't clear it because a million saplings grow in its place. It takes careful handling. Leaf fuel builds up after many years of European farming methods. You don't know what you don't know. Jed says, family history through phone calls with my dad, deep listening under the pine trees where grandpa's ashes were scattered in Nunawading. Lachlan says, everything is planted, everything grows, everything tries its hand, and then everything dies. But along the way, everything is witnessed, and so, therefore, everything lives regardless. That is my simple suburb named Narrewarren, but that is also everywhere. I live in a large garden. Laura says, a coo above me, one further away, rhythmic questions and answers floating in the wind. Tom says, listening is changing your mind, one piece of content at a time, allowing each piece of information you take in to change you instead of piling up on the back burner. And I take a quote from Lynn Kelly and Margot Neal in their book Songlines, where they say, we need to move into a new space. Lillian says, I was never interested in writing about myself, nor was I comfortable with other people reading about me. I wish more people knew that entire stories and accounts of a life could be compiled into a cloak made of possum skin. I've gained an interest in writing about myself and my life, as simple as recording the sounds in my backyard or exploring the history and the roots of the land it is on. Lara says, I thank you, Bunjil, for providing, especially for us children of immigrants who have forgotten so much. Sometimes the lineage of our practice is buried deep. Sometimes it's right in front of us but invisible. My grandfather named my father Fiore Silvano. It translates literally as flower of the forest. When I think of my grandfather and his farm, my father and his name, and me and my now real-time garden, I see the threads between us illuminated and taut, still pulling tight even though they are both gone. Declan says, I found that part of my connection was neglected and part of my identity was obscured. In trying to be cosmopolitan, I could not easily locate my own possum skin cloak. I had forgotten how I was formed. In looking outside of myself, I realised I'm more than my thoughts, but also my actions. I considered the balance in managing my garden, how irregular and unfocused efforts to maintain it had been overcome, and how this could be changed with being active and present. Jed says, what I thought was a disdain for where I lived is converted to a sense of pride and almost contentment. The strong Wurundjeri history of Simon Wonga and William Barrack has made me determined. Laura says, an acknowledgement of country needs to address your failings and the gaps in your knowledge. It's a working document. Timu says, I felt in the act of verbalising this commitment and agreement that had been made within me, that I begun to really grasp the gravity of what I was doing and what everyone else was engaging in. It felt like this step brought it out of me and made it real, physical almost, and true.
trying to teach my daughter about her history, but she's got other ideas. It's a warrior dance. Do you want to give it a go? Come on, let's try together.
Pagumuan na papaganakan, bumapay ngayon, hilab pagun saba. Ohukot kopio poporati. Ohukot kopio poporati. Isayangarano. Very bad attempt at dusun. Gonna have to teach me more, Trixie. Hey, that was pretty good. I thought it was your aunt.
To learn the dance is to give yourself over to the other side, to lose a part of myself, which is the West, modelled by particular ways of thinking and moving. I once learnt this dance as an adult, and I remember watching the other women and trying to mimic their movements in exactly the same way. They're struggling to teach me, the awkward learner, how to remember the dance steps. We move naturally to the music as I learn to perfect my movements. There's laughter, I forget who I am. There's a sense of timelessness, but also a sense of being out of time.
Oh, so embarrassing.
I move with the rhythm of the sounds, cross the threshold, and I'm more alert to the things shifting under my feet. Maybe this is how you can rebalance your mind in a world of flux, constant judgment, the policing of movement. How do we consider acts of movement? How to move between places and beyond, the crossing into thresholds, or to reflect on those forced to cross borders, to engage with states of no return.
So basically, it's so easy. Watch me. Mom, you're trying too hard.
I'm trying to teach my daughter about her history, but she's got other ideas. We dance with time, and yet there is no time. We read the landscape, but in every reading, we miss a beat. There's a rhythm to places, soft, fast, slow, or silent, but still the rhythm is there. We somehow manage to fall out of step with it. There are other distracting sounds, too much noise. Mother Nature carries a message. We can't go on living this way, she tells us. And in the same way, Indigenous song and ceremony repeat the message, retelling the story of our survival. If we lose our balance with nature, We must restore it by every possible means, goes one song I know. This is a song from my people called Magavau. It's a special and rare word. It's hard to translate into English, hard to know its many lessons if we don't know the secret language. Maybe I can share these teachings with you one day, if ever I become fluent. When one of my favourite writers, a Hawaiian scholar, Corinne Ingersoll, talks about her relationship with the sea, she describes dropping into a wave from her surfboard, the water on her skin and the salt on her tongue. The roar of the ocean is real, and then slowly her true self emerges. Her true self emerges. What does this mean? This got me thinking about the depth of the ocean and oceanic literacies. Imagine what the sea might say if we could find right ways to move with it, listening with our full being and an attentiveness to life forms, being and becoming our true selves. So now I want you to imagine you are looking out to sea. Because today I'm resting on my surfboard. The water below is deep and a wave is rolling in. The pull of the ocean is powerful. Do I give in to its power? Stand up now? Ah, too late. I missed the swell. Do I wait for another wave? Nah, it's too bloody cold. I'm in two minds again, and this is half the problem. I paddle back to shore. I'm not ready to surf today. I'm not ready for the truth.
Thank you, Olivia. Thanks for positing me and all of us back to the ocean there. It's nice to be sitting back on the sea and moving in that space and feeling the ocean right now. And thanks for your presentation. It was so moving and resonated so much with me. It reminded me of living in Tonga with my mum and my brothers when you spoke about weaving and dancing. And the kids laughing in your presentation gets me every time. Really beautiful, and such a pleasure to be here with you. And on that note, thank you, Bonny, as well. Yeah, such important work that you're doing, and thanks for sharing the learnings and the teaching. And Neil as well. Thanks so much for your songs and your words and your presence and the conversations we've had. So just lastly, on my behalf for this panel, having spent the last 8 months on the country of my formative years, that's Darumbal and Wapabara country, I've spent time listening and looking. I learned a couple of things. By writing memoir, the stories that used to occupy that place and my feeling of it were no longer there. It was much blander than I knew before, incredibly bland. From this blandness led me toward the void, which I learned is a mistake of my looking. That is, I was looking at the ocean rather than with the ocean. This ontological and subjective shift is very important within myself and this project. It changes everything. Suddenly, I'm not looking at stones on the island out the front, but with the stones, as if they are sentient and we are both existing together within the cosmos. The stone doesn't pick me up, so why should I pick it up? The wind moves the stone just as much as the wind moves me. From the failure to look and listen at the ocean in central Queensland, and then from giving up trying, exhausting it, I began to understand the notion of listening with. I learned this very simple notion of looking and listening with the phenomena or things I am seeing and hearing, listening with the wind, looking with the ocean. This simple difference from to with has created more change in me as a human and writer. A change of perspective, a collapsing of my own individualism and subjectivity. I am being with the world. I am alive with the world. I'm writing with my childhood self, memories, dad, and the ocean.
Everywhere we walk upon in this world, one indigenous group or another has once lived there before for thousands and thousands of years. Learn the most intricate and respectful ways to inhabit that place. We need to remember that. You're on indigenous land, original clans. Since beginning of man, countless years out on this land. Living so grand, aligned to commands, intrinsic align. Never disband, 60,000 plus. Following law before this sleight of hand. Through the seasons and sacred plants. Endure storms for many lost spans. From the desert down to the clay pan. Tropics and mountaintops, function ocean. Sanctified beaches, no equivalent. Swept with the tide, deeply advanced. Warriors, pose, so boys in a stance. Elders, wisdom, truth, never by chance. Sorcerers, elixirs, and transcendence. Standing in love across every expanse. Message the blind, it's in the hands. Breathless from beauty from all that expands. Infused with the magic, majestic and grand. Meridian Ma, thought of cool land. No more body, call it the band. Coco, Yalanji, Bangaren. Young you pie, Mirana, Bringen. Yota, Yota, Bunwereng. Where is it you standing, man? Whose land you standing on? Know the history, know the facts. It's indigenous land that you are on. Indigenous land is where you stand. Indigenous land is where you be. Indigenous land, it always was. Indigenous land, always will be. Indigenous land is where you stand. Indigenous land is where you be. Indigenous land, it always was. Indigenous land, always will be. Lest we forget the frontier wars and the genocide blueprint that does live on. That's in custody, is seized, no more prolific than ever forced by big girls. Still they gallivant and they raw boss. Children again and again, stole on in the blink of an eye. They go with us and then they are gone. We still amidst all these storms, 230 years on. Collision score, culture ignore. Fiction's insidious adorn. All of our sacredness shaken and sworn. All the while on indigenous land. We are living out that lies upon. Does your mind realize the song? As it posts in subliminal dawns. From ancestors on the rise on. To do not belong, a perpetual cycle of wrongs. It's been glorious, we will time bomb. But yeah, all of our kingdoms still here, still live on. We still countless original, limitless indigenous nations. So don't broken to the law. Ancestors sing along. They giving us more. Endlessly, they giving us more. From the desert to the shore, they delivering low. They sing it at low forevermore. Indigenous land is where you stand. Indigenous land is where you be. Indigenous land, it always was. Indigenous land, always will be. Indigenous land is where you stand. Indigenous land is where you be. Indigenous land, it always was. Indigenous land, always will be.
Indigenous land is where we stand. Indigenous land is the only place that we can stand. Indigenous land knows what we need to know, what we need to do, what we need to be as we must. Dora, Angaram, Ganbana.
Thanks, Niels. We're just going to unmute our screens now.
Thanks, Neil, for closing for us. And we've reached our time limit right on the minute. So Jacinta said we can run over time a little bit if anyone's got questions. We will take questions via the chat if you prefer, or you can ask to come on screen if you want to speak face to face. So I know some people might want to take a morning tea break, and it's okay with us if you need to go, but maybe we could sit here for 5 minutes and see if anyone wants to have a discussion. We might still have Neil on the line if anyone wants to have a discussion with Neil as well. Okay, well, we've got one question so far from Anne. Thanks, Anne, for listening and for your feedback. So you asking me about the feedback the students gave at the end of the course. It's really important component for me because I'm a student in the course as well. So what they feed back to me tells me about whether what we're doing is sitting with them and in them after the end of the course, that it's more than just doing coursework. And that is the feedback that I'd hoped for. But I've been running the course 2 years now, this year and last year, both online. And the feedback's been quite overwhelmingly reinforcing that students who are in the first couple of years of their degree really want to have the opportunity to talk about collaborative culture and to talk about their cultural standpoint and their cultural identity. But as non-Indigenous students, who are about 95% of the students in our discipline area, they are unsure how to do that in a culturally appropriate way. And so for them, the feedback is often that they're immensely invigorated by the opportunity to work with each other, to see each other as cultural peers, as well as to see each other as part of a shared cultural future and a shared historical past. So the feedback has been quite profound in both cohorts, and certainly a desire from the students that they wish they had encountered some of those conversations earlier in their education. We're doing this in the second year of their tertiary level education, so that says a lot about the readiness of these students to actually have those conversations much, much earlier than we are. So we're coming to it quite late as a group, but it's better late than never, as we all can understand. Yeah, that's about all I'd say about that. Thank you, Neil. Well, I don't think there are any other direct questions coming up. So just on behalf of our panel, thanks to everyone who's attended this morning for listening and for engaging with us. And thank you, Neil and Olivia and Oliver, for working on it together. And thank you, Jacinta, for shepherding our technology. Bye for now.